Okay. So the next topic for us is for the culture.
Yeah, you're gonna have
They,
to take the lead on this because
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't.
yeah,
I have.
yeah, yeah. Not a problem. So I just recently, and excuse me for looking at the side, I'm trying to make sure that I can do all the things that we need to do while we're talking about this. This is the book. It is by Marcus Collins, and it has to be one of the best books I've read on marketing. So let me tell you where I'm coming from. I just read this book by Daniel Coyle called The Culture Code, and I just read this book called Cultural Engineering by the author, in which I forgot. And there are some people that I've met on LinkedIn. Danielle McMillan is one of them, and she was going through the books that she has, and she mentioned it, and then somebody else mentioned it, and then I saw it somewhere else. And my rule is, if I hear a book about a book three times, I absolutely have to read it. And since it was in line with the two books I read before, and it was written by a brother, I was like, I definitely am buying that to check it out. And so, what I really like about it is it talks about marketing and target audiences from the basic stage of this is a tribe, this is a congregation, this is a community. These are the reasons why people really adhere to brands. And it's not because you keep talking about your benefits, it's because you are listening to the things they want, their beliefs. And if you share the same beliefs, then you become the leader of that belief, and then those people who believe with you become evangelists, and then he uses Bible scripture and like these other references that are really black, to help illustrate his points. He works at, I think, McKinsey right now, and he used to work for, what is his name, Mathew Knowles, Beyonce's father, and he was one of the ones who started building their digital media. So he was privy to the beginning of the Beyhive and all of the things that were happening. And so he studied and started replicating what he did for her for other brands. And those are all the things that he's talking about in the book.
Yeah, how much of that stuff is? Does he get into things that seep into your brain without any sort of formal structure?
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so much of when I think of things that are for the culture. When I hear that phrase "for the culture," I know exactly what it is,
Hmm.
but no one's told me what it is. You know what I mean? Like no
Oh,
one has
yeah.
sat me down and said, "Hey, this is what these phrases mean. This is what the Beyhive means. This is what." So, like, I know automatically to feel pride about the things that Beyonce has accomplished
Hmm.
without being told. I know
Yeah.
to feel pride about the Williams sisters.
Yeah.
I know, there are certain things that would be classified as for the culture that are unspoken. Kind of the way Black Twitter or Black X now
Right.
is this
That.
thing that exists that doesn't get talked about. So I'm wondering if that book talks about or touches on things, talks about things that seep into your brain without any sort of organized structure.
Yeah, well, he talks about why it seeps into your brain. He goes through the evolution of the brain, and then how we were wired for culture, and why certain things hit us more emotionally immediately than trying to do things like, oh, our brand is better than this brand because of this. It's like our brand supports these things, and because they support these things, we create this marketing material so that when people who feel the same way we do see it immediately have alignment. He talks about what he did with the Brooklyn Nets when they moved from Jersey, because there was this rivalry between Brooklyn and Manhattan, because Manhattan keeps on taking it while Brooklyn keeps on making it. And oh man, I can't believe I did that. Anyway,
It's all
yeah.
good.
So he was saying how he started a campaign to make sure they would accept the Brooklyn Nets by just like dissing Manhattan, and so, but they didn't even put that it was for the Brooklyn Nets at all. They were just like, this is why there's so much strength as a Brooklynite. And so people started really rallying around that idea. And then after a while, they started showing that it was for the Nets. And they were like, before the net even really officially moved, we were selling out of merchandise. We were having all of these celebrity endorsements from people in New York, and it was just like really insightful to understand how to build things that resonate with people so far.
Yeah, it's funny how that's another thing that's weird. So when you say when you were saying we, you were talking about human beings or black people.
Human beings, all
Okay,
human beings.
that's what I thought. That's what
Yeah.
I thought.
The other
So the
example, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just thinking about the loyalty of place, like
Mm-hmm.
people adopting, feeling a certain loyalty or affinity, or even a desire to defend a place
Mm-hmm.
that you may not necessarily have a pure emotional or blood connection to, like
Yeah.
Manhattan or Queens or Brooklyn or Harlem or Houston or Dallas, or like particularly Houston or Dallas. I don't think Austin has anything like that. Where
No, not yet.
San Antonio does to some degree. West Coast, East Coast, no coast. Everybody has that sort of sense of some affinity toward having a loyalty to where you're from or where you live or where you're at. I've always thought
Mm-hmm.
that was interesting.
Well, that's the power of tribes. That's what he
Yeah,
talks about.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's fascinating. And I love that you're talking about that because I'm from New Orleans. New Orleans had that sense of like pride of culture because of all the cultural artifacts that they produced, right? Jazz, food, Mardi Gras. Oakland has that same feeling.
Yep.
Brooklyn has that feeling, especially like for me when it's predominantly black. When that feeling comes in from black people, it's like I always feel like home no matter where it is.
Yeah, I get that. I remember the first time I felt that was as a kid, being I think I was 11.
Uh
Went to
huh.
Washington, went to Washington D.C.,
Oh yeah.
and that was the first time I'd seen that many black people in my life.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't classify it as the birth of hip hop by any means, but I saw an element of hip hop for the first time there that I had never seen. It was a dude. He had two turntables. He had the same record playing on both, and I didn't know why. I
Ah.
didn't know that he was going to be using a break going back and forth between the records to extend the break.
Hmm.
And then a guy walks up and picks up a microphone and starts rapping over what he's doing, and I had never seen anything like that before.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm at the Washington Monument in that big lawn area where all the grass is,
Hmm.
and in every direction, all you see is black people.
Yeah.
And I was like, this, like from a small town in Texas to seeing that,
You were
I
like,
was,
am I in Africa?
I'm like, why am I living where I'm living? Like,
That's exactly. Every time I go to Atlanta, that's how I feel.
because I felt comfortable there, and I remember
Like
being in
in your
Houston.
skin.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the first time I was in Houston, just the neighborhood we were in, everybody that was going into the store was black. The people that worked in the store was black.
Hmm.
And then when we walked outside, a cop that pulled up was black. And there was that feeling of just like, oh, just like whatever pressure I had on me was just gone.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have that weight that I have everywhere else. Like it was just I was just light as a bird there.
Yeah. My sister has visited Ghana because her husband's from Ghana. And she said, imagine that like 100-fold, where it's like everybody's black. There's no feeling of anything other than you're black,
Yeah.
which is amazing. The other thing I wanted to talk about is you were talking about, what was it, a sense of place? And then we were talking about the start of hip hop. And Marcus Collins does mention that in his book. And the other thing that I'm starting to look at a lot is this white dude, I forget his name, but he has this show on YouTube called Digging the Greats. And he
Yeah, I
goes
know what you're talking
into
about. I know exactly who you're talking about.
amazing detail about like hip hop and all the intelligence that went into it. And I'm like, why don't we really know about this stuff? So I think now is a time for us to have conversations about these things so that everybody else knows, so that we can all feel that sense of pride. And I'm gonna let you close out, but we've got to move to the next topic.
Yeah, real quick, I think that you and I both need to pay attention and remember that aspect when we're creating brand strategies, when we're trying to find ways to get a community to feel like they are a community.
Oh yeah.
That blueprint has already been, it's there.
Yeah, that
So,
book
yeah.
is so good. I don't want other people to read it because they're gonna know all the secrets. So I'm kind of promoting on the slip, but I'm really enthralled in that book. Every time I pick it up, I'm like, it's amazing. Okay, what's next? We got Heartbeat from
Yeah.
Pentagram.
I was gonna